Good morning and good afternoon, Rick.
Good afternoon to you and good morning to you too.
And welcome to anyone that is joining us today. We're delighted that you're back with us. It's always nice. So yes, this is a meetup between good friends across the world. And this is our kind of regular spot, isn't it? We've been doing this for over a year now, haven't we, Rick?
We have. It's a little bit irregular the last couple of weeks
That's okay.
due to crazy things happening. But yeah, it's been a joy to meet up every week, and I've missed the last couple of weeks. So it's nice to be back online with you.
Isn't it? You know, and you'd think we'd run out of things to say to each other by now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I've been told I don't have an off switch, so that's not going to happen soon.
Well, that's great. I can see we've already got people watching, which is lovely. So good morning to you wherever you are in the world. Please do join us in the chat room. Rick, you and I are going to be talking about our running title is How Does It Serve Us? And if I'm not mistaken, that's about how we hold on to the past, maybe forget to let go. I'm stuttering a bit because I've got something in my eye. So if I start streaming from one side, that's why. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that, please?
Sure. Let's set the scene. It would be virtually impossible for us to go back to Stone Age. Right? And and we're birthing a new paradigm. This is what the Great Awakening is about. It's about moving away from that which doesn't serve us, that which is not serving all of humanity and all the species and our planet Earth. We're not talking about just a few on the top of the pyramid, the wealthy, the controllers, the power brokers. We're talking about every man, woman, and child and species on the planet and the planet itself. So we're moving towards this new way of being and doing and having. And so there is probably one of our greatest fears is the fear of the unknown. So we are pushing out the boundaries of consciousness in order to build something new. And we've seen how technology's just ramped up and gone ballistic in the last few years. And we've made more gains than any other time in history. Go on, you were going to say something?
No, I'm just trying to add a banner to the bottom of the screen.
Oh, right.
Because, and I've done it wrong as well. I wonder if I can edit that. I mean, you're right. I mean, you're talking about this new, that should be done now. You're talking about, like this new world we're creating and that it might take new behaviors. How do you think people are doing with it so far? Like the people that you're meeting, in your day to day? Because I know a lot of people that I'm speaking with at the moment are struggling a little bit at the moment, myself included. There's lots of new experiences. And I know that the big old Neptune-Jupiter conjunction last week has brought in a wave of something or other. I think it's divine love, which has that sort of clearing energy. But if you're not expecting clearing, loving energy to come in and show you where you're still hurt, then it's actually quite painful for people. How are people around you at the moment?
Yeah, let's come back and superimpose the astrological perspective on what's being discussed here. So yes, I'm experiencing challenges, as everybody is. Everybody around me is experiencing challenges as we start to dismantle the old. And we haven't birthed the new. We're taking this old paradigm and we're sifting through it to see what does work, right? There are things that we don't want to throw away, indigenous wisdom and permaculture and respecting the earth. We don't want to throw those out, but we want to sort through what does work and still serve us, and then allow the rest to drift away. And and we're building a bridge to the new paradigm, but it's not fully formed. It's still in the embryonic stage. So we don't know whether it's a girl or boy. Let's use that as an analogy. And we can't define
she transgender or about 40 million other genders, right?
Yes, exactly. exactly.
I mean, that also adds into the mixture, doesn't it? You know, that not only are we dismantling the old and waiting for the new to emerge and arise within us, but in recent times, there have been a good zillion different categories coming into our awareness that we're also still processing, not just about gender, but pretty much about everything.
Yes.
It's almost like there's also a collective confusion going on as well.
No stone is being left unturned. It's just everything that we've relied on from the past that has been what I call a stable datum. This is, we can always fall back on this. And even that's being shaken and disrupted and changing. And yet there is sometimes a compulsion to want the past. I wish we could be how we were when we first met. Or I wish we could go back to the 60s when it was free and we were all hippies and growing our hair long and had all this freedom, wishing and wishing to go back. Yeah. And yet there is no going back unless we make a time machine, which I'd love to do. But
I'm sure there is one.
Well, we have a time machine. It's called the mind.
Yeah.
The mind can take us back to memories. And they can be filled with aromas and sights and sounds and all of those things. But can we bring them, all of them, to the present time? Now, we should also know that the ego, which is steeped in fear and separateness and superiority and all the other subsets, it wants us either in the past or in the future. If we're in present time, the ego is not present. And I challenge any of us to demonstrate that. When you're truly present, being mindful, the ego is nowhere to be found. But very easy to have a thought and regurgitate the past, or very easy to perhaps mock up a future that you would like. But the reality, go ahead.
I think that's an interesting thought. Me and Mr. M were having a conversation yesterday about the way of no thinking. Like, Carl absolutely loves the idea of no thinking, and so is very much focused on the present. Doesn't talk too much about the future. Really hates talking about the past. Like, if I try and connect him into the past, he's really not interested. And yeah, I honor that in him, really. And it's also a source of frustration, because sometimes in trying to plan the future, we refer to the past and this, that, and the other. But that's my ego probably wanting to assert itself and be more important. I don't know. But one of the things that I have noticed is when you are in the present, you can't really have a thought. Because the moment you're having a thought, it's a reaction to something that's gone before, like you said, or it's something that's coming up that you're thinking about. The monkey mind is already going through. You're really right. I think that challenge is a really good challenge that you set. Be in the present. Can you have a thought?
Well, that present's gone now.
Yeah.
So, and now that one's gone too. So there are only technically, because the left hemisphere is linear, it thinks in a linear time, and the right hemisphere of our brain sees the holistic picture. Then the left brain, which is the host to the ego, that bunch of cells in the left hemisphere, is trying to superimpose everything in a linear fashion. Yeah. So it had to start somewhere, and it has to end somewhere. And I know what I was doing when I was 13 in Australia, or I knew my first car I bought. I can go back to all those things. So they must exist. But in essence, when we're thinking about the past, we're actually bringing it up into present time and seeing the imagery or the conceptualization of that time in present time.
Yeah.
And if we're mocking up a future and have some beautiful goals and aspirations, we're actually doing it in present time, and we're creating a future. So the sages of old have told us there is only this moment of now, and that moment is gone. So if we are infinite beings,
Yeah.
then we shouldn't be stifled by a linear time frame. Although, having said that, the left hemisphere makes sense of the holistic big blunderbuss shot out there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to put this moment to this moment, and we would be all over the place. Right? So we do need the left hemisphere to make some sense out of it and to really navigate ourselves through the world. But to try coming full circle now, how does it serve us to hang on to something in the past which we can't change? Right? How does it serve us to hang on to it, knowing also now that it's the coming directly from the ego? It's the ego wanting the past, wanting the good times, wanting revenge perhaps for when we've been hurt, not forgiving somebody. We want to make them suffer or whatever. So it's very classic ego behavior, although one wouldn't think so if you were recalling a beautiful experience that you'd had in the past that was filled with love and joy and happiness. You think, well, how can that come from the ego? Well, that's is true of that situation, but it's the ego driving us back into that situation, or more true to the fact, pulling that into their present time.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because the people I've been working with a lot recently have felt things arise in them, just as I have too. And, you know, in the work that we've been doing together, we've been doing quite a lot of timeline therapy, going back into the past to notice the first time we'd felt that emotion. Because often, I mean, it's certainly true for me. And the way that I perceive this is that when I feel something now and I'm feeling triggered, the only thing that is triggering me is the fact that this feeling reminds me of something that's happened in the past that was painful, that I wasn't able to get over. And so we've been doing this kind of time travel in the mind, and then also future pacing, like going into the future to imagine what our future will be like. Now we've resolved this, next time we happen to have this kind of triggering go on. So I'm very much aware of people using time as a healing tool at the moment, you know, to go backwards, forwards, forwards, backwards. And it can be quite useful. But like you say, it's very easy to get trapped in it, and to get trapped in those blame, shame, guilt, anger, victim patterns. I mean, you didn't actually explicitly say it, but I recognize that when you do go back into the past, you can connect in. We've been playing Smold style music for the kids. And one thing I really noticed was when we were listening to a bit of music from the 80s, I felt so optimistic and so full of promise. Because back then I didn't have any kind of sense that there might be something untoward going on behind the scenes, you know, with music. And I had that sense of pure optimism and that sense of innocence. And I wept for the feeling of relaxation, of knowing, you know, like that feeling that everything was well in the world. And now when I listen to music, you know, I wonder what it's like for young teens growing up now listening to music. There's a lot of edginess. There's so much edginess in the media and what we see around us to imply that nothing is actually that safe. Yeah, it's a funny one, like sitting in time, observing time, how different times make us feel, or not make us feel, how we feel when we're observing different times. How do we like, how does it serve us? Which is the title of this show. You know, how does it serve understanding time?
Let me clarify. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the past, and there's nothing wrong with the future. There's nothing. If we forego our imagination and curiosity, how will we ever create a better world?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we're doing. We're imagining a better world, and then putting in place the actions to bring that about, to create it. How would we remember the recipe of a cake that we made 4 months ago and we just borrowed the recipe book. What did I put in there as a ingredient? I know we had some vanilla extract, some whole grain flour, and we can recall that and use it. So it's not that the past and present are evil. If we look at a coin, there's two sides, and then when we look at it straight on like that, there's the oneness of the two sides.
Yeah,
so
I like that analogy.
There's past, there's present, and there's past and future, and there's present.
Yeah.
So going into the past, some of my personal experience has been regression therapy, and I've regressed literally thousands of people over the years. And I found it's the only way to get to the trauma and relieve the pain of the trauma and dismantle the story that was built around it. So if we don't have access to that or bring it up to access it in present time, then we wouldn't be resolved. And these challenges have occurred for us to learn lessons and to ultimately become more conscious.
Yeah.
And again, creating a compelling, beautiful future for our kids and 7 generations ahead.
And also relieving the past.
Yeah.
Relieving all those that have come before us by our current position. I love what you're saying there. You've used regression, I've used timeline therapy. It's the same thing, isn't it, really? Just different,
Yes.
Slightly different ways of doing it. When I was talking to Mr. M yesterday about like his love of the way of no thinking, and then I always delve into the past and into the future. I am left-handed using right brain thinking pretty much a lot of the time, and he's right-handed using left brain thinking a lot of the time, although he's very creative as well. When I stumble across a problem, my instinct is to check in, when was I feeling it in the past, and how, because there's obviously something to let go of. He doesn't entertain that. He aims to stay in the present where there is no thought. And in that moment of staying present, then that thing doesn't exist anyway. And this becomes a bit of a bone of contention between us, because he wonders why the hell I go back into the past where the pain is, and why I go into the future where my unrealized dreams are, rather than just staying in the present. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Because he is right. Like, if I stay in the present, then none of that pain exists anyway.
Does that mean that it's just because you can't see it or feel it? Does it mean it doesn't? Like, where are the Wi-Fi signals right now? We don't see them, but they're there.
Yeah.
So only by revisiting them can we resolve them. Right? We can deny them, we can squash them, we can run away from them, all of that. But they have to be viewed, accepted, take responsibility for, and bring disconnect the pain and anxiety and worry from it, so that we can see it as for what it is. And my first powerful regression therapy, I think my story, that I was sexually abused by a pedophile uncle when I was 5. And I carried that around with me for 30 years until I had some regression therapy. And it was completely and utterly buried. I had no inkling about it. I was dramatizing the behaviors of it, of what I was being told. This is a secret, don't tell anybody, blah, blah, blah. But I had no concept of the content until I went to regression therapy. And it's all gone now. I can talk about it. I have photographs of me in the area where I was, where I abused. It never had any ill effect on me whatsoever. Wow. So the same with my story on the Vietnam War. These were very painful situations that I've resolved through therapy, of going back or bringing it into present time. viewing it for what it is, stripping out what did I gain from it, right? And what were the lessons to be learned? So I do think there's a lot of merit in cleaning up our time track from that. But to answer your question, your mind is not your mind. It's the collective mind of humanity, right? And the Buddha told us this 2,500 years ago, having the right thought, because every thought goes into the collective mind of humanity.
Yeah.
Now, this collective mind has been filled with fear for quite a few decades. We've had 2 wars. We've got another one going in Ukraine. We've had the fear of COVID.
That's the war, isn't it?
It's a war. There's mass media that just perpetrates fear on every news cycle. So what that does is it creates a collective mind filled with fear. But the new paradigm, and we started this in the 60s, the indigo children are now adding to it, the crystal, the rainbow children, awakening people, are now starting to replace the fear with love. Yeah. And that black cloud, let's call it a black cloud of fear, is now being met by a white cloud of love. The fear is still prominent. It's still the major one. But we're getting a merging of these two, and we're getting a gray area. And I believe that the white cloud of love will overtake. The black cloud will still be there, but it won't be the dominant emotion or feeling as it has been in the past. So if we're talking about a collective mind, how are we going to shut that up? For on this planet, there are 7.8 billion minds, all having thoughts. All right. I know I have random thoughts that just pop in my head out of nowhere. These are coming from the collective mind, right? It's not me sitting down consciously. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to think about how I would do this or what I want to do in the garden today. It's a random thought out of nowhere. This is the collective mind. So how can we control that? How can we silence that?
It's interesting you say that. It took quite a while for me to realize, like consciously realize, that I had that going on a lot. So a few times a day, probably, I realized that I've been in a daydream, and a whole conversation or a stream of a conversation in a place I've never been to is in my mind. And in that exact moment, I feel like I am that person having that thought and having that conversation. It feels really real, as if I know the fallback story and the forward story, whatever's about to occur. And then it disappears. And for years, I just didn't even think about it. It would come in, and then I would, some dominant thing would be going on in my life, and I would forget it. But over the last few years, I've noticed these little things come up, and it's like I'm in somebody else's story, which I can only, I wasn't sure if it was that, I'm living simultaneous lives all around the world at the same time, or, that we are all one, and all of a sudden the consciousness of a different part of that oneness arises in me and then goes just like that. And that must be happening to everyone. It obviously happens to you as well. Yes. I wonder how many people that are listening have had that experience as well, where you are in that moment as an observer or as the real person experiencing somebody else's life intimately without even realizing. It's bizarre.
And we can consciously do that. It's called quantum jumping.
Is it? Oh,
but yes. If there is one of us, and I believe there is one infinite consciousness that is the substrata of everything, even everything that's solid. Quantum physics has already said this. The sages of old said everything is connected. Einstein says everything is energy. So if there are any of these energy beings, infinite consciousness on this planet alone is experiencing itself through 7.8 different billion bodies. So we are this consciousness, and then we can tap into what's going on with somebody else that is sharing this consciousness, just as you've described. So we're because there's only one of us, we can tap into somebody else's thought process. Ideas happen, new ideas happen around the world, and somebody says, I invented this, or I had an idea. But before you know it, there's 20 or 30 people with the same idea, and you've not spoken to anybody. You know? So we're sharing the same mind.
If
so
I,
there's no thought.
Yeah.
I'm sharing your perspective. I think we need thought to be able to navigate our way through this dualistic universe. Without thought, without consideration of what we will do next, what do we want to put into this next moment of now? Is it going to be love or fear? If we're just in this la-la land, and I've seen the results of people that have just been so spaced out, overdid LSD in the 60s, and they can't function. They're unable to function in this world. They're in this space, this other space. So yes, you can go through there in plant medicine and meditation and having profound epiphanies, but then you come back to your normal life. And this for me is the secret. Have an extraordinary life in an ordinary way.
Yes, and be comfortable with it.
Very comfortable.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Something that's been sort of coming up for me at the moment is I've actually been, I'd like to say I've been doing some radical surrendering, but that would be a lie. I noticed quite painfully recently that, you know, I'm often planning for the future, and I've been working towards a goal for a good 2 years now, maybe 3.5 years. And every now and again, I stop because I realize it's not working. And then I think, oh God, I've got to keep this need to get me to this place is really, really strong. And I'm having to give that up because I realize I'm not getting anywhere towards this goal that I'm aiming towards. And it's really disconfirming to have put so much energy in over 2 or 3 years to have it amount to nothing. And of course, it hasn't amounted to nothing. But living in the gap between where I am now and where I hope to be, I think it's okay to do that if you can kind of function, but it's got to a level now where my dream of the future is impacting my present, and the dissatisfaction is arising with it. So I'm trying to surrender and kind of grieve the future that I'm expecting to have, which I know is not going to happen, or I don't know it for sure, but I can't see how it can happen. So I now kind of releasing as best I can, not very gracefully, but like releasing these thoughts that I've had as to how my future should look. And it's really tricky, really, really tricky. You know, when you've worked consistently hard towards something, I almost feel like a bit of a fool, you know, working towards something. It feels like as I'm looking at the outcomes of my strivings, I feel foolish to have thought I could have, I don't know. I think it's the embarrassment of knowing that I failed by my own expectations. And so that's obviously something that, you know, going back to our title, does not serve me. And so even though I do consider myself to be a dreamer, right now I'm having a very strong dose of realism or pessimism, maybe, I don't know. Have you found like through the gap difficult? Have you sort of experienced that? Or what would you say about living in the gap? Is that the route to insanity?
No, it's not. And you may call me a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. John Lennon.
Yeah.
Okay. I have dreams and aspirations. I ideas, visions of what I would like to create for my future, for my family.
Yeah.
And then I put it out there, and then I sever the attachment. There's nothing wrong with having dreams and aspirations. How else could we create a better world?
Yeah.
How else could Sherpa Tenzing and Hillary make it to the top of Everest, right? Without those dreams and aspirations and ideas of what the future could look like, it would never happen. Remember, we're creating our reality. Us humans have created the reality we're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
And what is being proposed is, let's create something else that belongs to love, peace, harmony, equality, all of that. So it's the attachment to that outcome. And if you think about it, let me what we're doing in a way, 360 degrees in the circle.
Yeah.
And we're saying, I'm going to take 1 degree, and that's what I want to create. Right? We put all our attention on it. I want to win the lottery because I need money to do this. Right? We put all our attention on manifesting this at the expense of the rest of that degree of that circle. Right? So have your dreams and aspirations, and then sever the attachment, because the reality is, it's 2:02 here in the afternoon. I cannot tell you with 100% certainty what's going to happen at 4:00 this afternoon. I cannot do that. In fact, nobody can. So we don't know what the outcome is. And when we put it out there and it doesn't manifest, there's always followed by disappointment.
Yeah.
And we call it failure. We haven't failed. The universe hasn't provided, or we haven't created. We are the universe. Nothing is separate. We haven't created the manifestation of that. So again, it's like, call it the universe, call it the field of potential.
Oh, I like
We
that
are
more.
dipping into this field of potential and saying, everything exists. We're saying, I would like to bring that into my reality. And then we go through the machinations to get there.
Yeah.
Just because it hasn't manifested yet doesn't mean to say it's not there. That potential is always there. But it's the attachment to any given outcome that, or when it's not met, it's met with disappointment. So sever the attachment. Don't lose sight of your dreams and aspirations. Right? But go to the future and come back into present time. Go to the past and come back into present time. It's dwelling on either of those for forever, right? And not being in present time, functioning on what needs to be done now, that doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us to be constantly in the future, forgetting things and not getting things done in present time. Equally, it doesn't serve us to be in the past, regurgitating that all the time and not getting on with what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So that's my read on it.
Thank you. It's very good. I love the term quantum jumping. If we can jump into other people's reality consciously for a moment, does that mean we can also do kind of like quantum hacking? Also start hacking their experience?
Yes, you can. Bob Proctor has, I think I have about 4 or 5 of his videos on quantum jumping. And basically, I'm not sure if I've got all the story right, but there were 5, he's in his 70s when he started this. He said there were 5 things that I haven't done that I would like to do. And one of them was playing the guitar, the acoustic guitar. Within a very short span of time, he was playing the guitar, right? And all he did was he created and mocked up a fantastic guitarist in the world. Maybe he was thinking of Eric Clapton or a flamenco guitarist, and he tapped into that energy, knowing that we are
Right.
sharing the spirit of this person, and they're extremely well talented. And you tap into that and download from that person, and you take in
No
those
way.
qualities, and he achieved all 5 of his goals that he wanted to achieve.
Wow.
Look up Bob Proctor. I'm not sure. I think he's still alive, but Google quantum jumping Bob Proctor. It's fascinating stuff. So there are, there's great economists, there's great teachers, there's great.
Uh-oh, looks like I've lost you. Oh no. Okay, so this happens. You're back. That's good.
I'm back. Yes.
I was going to say at the start, we're in a bit of a storm here as well. We've got our shutters going from all this like heavy wind and stuff. So I was sort of anticipating that may happen. So you're talking about quantum jumping. Check out the work of Bob Proctor.
Yes.
I love that because I remember when I was doing my NLP and hypnosis training, we went into a trance of somebody in the past or somebody that we wanted to experience the thinking of, and to bring it to our conscious awareness and to see what happens. And I was interested in doing William Blake, poet, artist, writer from a few hundred years ago, or however many, I can't even remember now. But I studied William Blake in my teens because I was studying English and art and design and also religious studies. And he covered all 3 of those. And so that seemed like a bit of a hack. Work on one person and work on 3 studies. So anyway, as I got his consciousness or tuned into his consciousness through hypnosis, I did a drawing that really looks like one of his drawings, but I felt really awful. Whatever the energy of him is that I was perceiving, I was looking around modern day, looking at just how everyone was behaving and how they were dressed, and I was really shocked, actually quite judgmental. But yeah, I have sort of experienced that, but I don't know why I didn't think to use that experience to be able to plan some of the like to install the behaviors of somebody I respect or somebody who's got something that I'd love to understand. I mean, that sounds really quite cool.
Yes. And what is family constellations?
Oh, it's the same. Yeah.
It's exactly the same. You go into this valence of somebody that you've never met, right? And you start acting out, and the person who's this is directed to is often gobsmacked because you actually sometimes are expressing the words that this is what my dad would say or my mum would say that, or the behavior. So family constellations are really just tapping into the energy of that person. And, there's nothing new. Nothing is new. All these new inventions, they may be off planet, they may be extraterrestrial or whatever, but Nikola Tesla, right? He just had stuff that was so avant-garde, so off this planet, that who's to say that he wasn't tapping into a more consciously evolved person on it from another sphere, another dimension, and downloading it, right? Who's to say that film directors, right, are not downloading things from the future or creatures that are in Star Wars? Who's to say that they weren't downloaded from some place that existed already? And that's while the ego likes to take credit for, well, this is my story and my film, and I thought all this up. But did we? Did we?
Yeah. This is very useful, actually. So, where to next? Like in this conversation about how things either serve us or don't. What should we be talking about? Is there something that really we should touch on in this conversation? I know I've just shoulded us twice, but forgive me for that. like, you know, we're talking about letting go and exploring consciousness and using the amazing benefit that we have from time consciousness, like our awareness of the past and the future, and also the gift of the present. You know, what haven't we touched on? What's missing from this conversation?
Well, we've sort of implied that there's no point in dragging up the past. There is value in healing the past, but the opposite of that is to go into the past, and I do this with my coaching clients. Write down your successful actions. What were you doing that was leading to your success, either in your business, in your relationship, in your education, in your sport? There were things that you were doing that were leading you to greater experiences, more beautiful experiences perhaps, and they've been dropped out because this is the way of the ego. It doesn't want you to be free. It's like riding a horse. The reinsman is the ego, and it just galloping along the beach and gradually pulls back on the rein and pulls on the bit very so slowly and slightly. And gradually the horse slows down until it comes to the full stop. The ego does this surreptitiously, and we drop out successful actions around going to the gym 3 times a week, about dieting, about giving up coffee or alcohol or any other subject that doesn't really serve us anymore. So we can use the past and what we've done successfully and rehabilitate those and bring them into present time. So that's one way of countering some of the negative effects of our past.
Yes, and I can also, you know, in the same way as we can go to the past and look at how we've been successful in achieving things, we can also go to the future in our imaginations and see us having already resolved the problem that we may currently have. And then imagine what your future self might also share with you. That was the key in achieving that.
Yes.
So I guess we're talking about perspective now, aren't we, really?
Yes. And what you were saying is exactly true. Let's imagine and mock up a future that we want to bring into our reality, into manifestations. And then don't focus on all the barriers and obstacles. Always focus your attention on where you want to be, what you want to become, rather than yes, but look at all those obstacles. Right? And this is the way of the martial arts expert who wants to. I think I've done this before. There's a piece of wood. I want to break this as a martial arts expert. I ask people, where do you aim for? And they say, oh, in the middle. No. To one side. No. Or maybe there's a knot in the wood. No. We aim for the space below. Right. We don't see the wood. We just want our hand to finish up here with the wood broken. So there's the future. Here's the future here. This is what we want to create. This is what we want to bring. Don't focus all your attention on the barriers or obstacles, because that's exactly where we'll get stopped. Or it was too hard, or it's going to cost too much money, or any other reason. Come back, focus on where you want to be, and the universe will support you by giving the opportunity to overcome the odds.
That's
I was
very
just reading the other day, I think it's 3 people that were paralyzed from the waist down has made it to the top of Mount Everest.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Obviously they had help, right? But think of that. Who would be crazy enough to be in their wheelchair and saying, Dad, Mum, I'm going to make it to the top of Mount Everest? They would think you were crazy. And yet 3 people have done it. And many others that were, one guy was blind, I think, if I remember rightly. He had to be led there. So, you know, making the impossible possible.
Oh, yes.
Aim for where we want to be. And for me, with my online courses and the work I'm doing now and the writing, I'm mocking up for what I can realize and what I can conceptualize is a better world for all of us. And
Yeah.
as an astrologer, you know that the age of Aquarius is 2,000 years of peace, love, and reconciliation. And that's all my attention. I'm not getting caught up in all the fear and the obstacles and barriers that are presenting themselves. I sometimes struggle to get over the obstacle, but
Yeah.
that's part of the challenge anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, sure
We
is.
could run 100 meters, or we could run 100 meters of hurdles, right? One is going to be a lot easier than the other, and both are achievable. So, and if enough of us start creating in our minds, in our hearts, what we want, we know we have experienced exactly what we don't want. Being locked in our houses, not having choices, all of the stuff that's happening, we're experiencing what we do want. And many people now are waking up and saying, okay, what do we want? We know what we don't want. What do we want? And then create that, imagine it, and work towards that. Now we're building the white cloud, which will overcome most of the black cloud. The duality will still be there. But we won't be as accepting. There will be unscrupulous, nefarious people that will want to cause problems in the lives of people. But we won't support them. We won't support them in government. We won't support them at the head of corporations or schools or headmasters or pedophilia. We just won't support that.
Yeah, I
And
do
yet
notice.
now we're just giving away and saying we're powerless. I don't believe in the 99% and 1%, but if you just took those two numbers, what does that tell you? The numbers are on our side. Right? All we have to do is turn the television off and get in our hearts and imagine a better world. We could sit in the cave in the Himalayas doing that, and we'd be making a difference to the collective mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Go on. Sorry, you were about to say something.
Only that yes, the outer narrative that's being spun by the media at the moment appears to be collapsing before our very eyes, which I'm kind of finding quite interesting, quite amusing. But these things change, don't they? You mentioned that you've been doing quite a lot of work with your books and courses and things like that. Do you want to give us an update as to where you are there? Because I'd like to hear.
Well, I've launched my first course on Udemy, which is a big portal. It's called The Ego and the Authentic Self. And I've done no marketing whatsoever. I've got it's only been on there a week, I think. And I've got some people on the course now writing some good reviews. And this morning I got some excellent news. Humanity Team, which is a big group of people, worldwide audience, they've accepted my course on their portal as well. So
I've even heard of them, and yet I feel like I should be on their team.
Neil Donald Walsh was one of the originators of it.
Okay.
Just if you Google Humanities Team, it's there's some amazing people. Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Nassim Harriman. There's so many good people on there, and I've just been accepted today on that one. So I'm looking at these different portals to spread these messages out there. And I've got at least 5 more online courses to finish this year.
Wow.
I'm going to be busy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's, I mean, what you've just shared there actually is a source of fascination. When we think about the internet, when we perceive the internet, most likely we both perceive the internet that is in English. And yet there is you know, like when I see through my French friends or Portuguese friends, like the way they use Facebook, like the Facebook we see really is just in English mainly. I mean, you might see an Indonesian side of Facebook that I don't really see. The internet is so much bigger than what we can perceive, because we're all feeding into it through our different cultures and backgrounds and languages and stuff. And that's the thing that I notice, you know, there are so many seekers and so many teachers and so many communities that are online, and we find the ones that resonate with us. And, you know, like, for years, I've really just had a few people that I really follow and admire. And to me, it's felt like they're the only people that are speaking. And yet, like hearing, you know, there's the humanity team. I'm like, whoa, you and I have been connected for 12 years now. How the hell did I not come across the humanity team? You know, it's a pretty big concept, isn't it? And so it's kind of reassuring to hear that, you know, there are so many people all doing pretty much the same thing, in their different ways, to appeal to different people. That is uplifting.
It is.
It's a lovely thought, isn't it?
And
you know,
where you get to critical mass, things will accelerate. So this is not getting any publicity, right? You won't see this on CNN that humanities team is doing some amazing things, because exactly what's happening, there is another war that's happening now. It's a war on consciousness.
Yeah.
We are being deliberately being kept from advancing our conscious awareness, our conscious evolution. And there are some people that are completely succumbed to that. But there's a massive groundswell of people that are awakening to their true core identity and doing something about it. And we've seen this through yoga, through online courses, through retreats, through speakers. Rarely do they get any mainstream media. So we have to discover this for ourselves. But this snowball is unstoppable. It may be small at the moment at the top of the hill, but by the time it gathers momentum and gathers more volume and strength and speed, then it will burst out at the bottom, spreading consciousness around the world. And that's our critical mass. That's the critical mass, that the event horizon, the tipping point, that I'm sensing we're either in it or very close to it. And again, it's associated with the age of Aquarius. There may be 100 years where we exit the Piscean age, and there's a mix of Piscean activity and a little growth in Aquarian age, and then we get to the moot point, the tipping point, where it predominantly becomes more Aquarian age. And we sang about this in the 60s. And the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Hopi Indians, indigenous people have been talking about this for a very long time. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And, you know, in reference to you talking about, you know, have we reached a tipping point? I know last time I spoke about this, I said there was 3 people that I knew who have gone inside themselves, like gone into a period of extreme meditation. Like they are literally just completely detaching. I now know about 6 or 7 people who I consider to be awakened beings, and almost like a coordinated effort. They have all kind of taken themselves out of the main flow of the world, and they are in a place of peace and reverence and connection, and holding countries, holding continents, holding the world or humanity in a place of peace. And they've, you know, I've spoken briefly to all of them, and they are doing it. They all intuited that was what they needed to do, that their piece. And so, you know, if I know 6 or 7 of them, you know, there's going to be hundreds, thousands of them around the world doing this at the same time, because, you know, their life allows them to do it as well. You know, we all have our different parts to play, but, you know, we don't get to hear about them. I mean, they really are the unsung heroes, aren't they?
Yes.
You know, because they're not even doing it in such a way that they get any publicity at all. They are so secure in themselves, or so secure in that they are not themselves, that they don't need to worry about their ego. They just sit there in a place of contemplation, a bit like what you're talking about, going into a cave in the Himalayas.
Yes.
I always like how you say Himalayas, because you know, in England we say Himalaya, and is that an Australian term, the way you say Himalaya?
No, it's a Nepalese term, I think.
Ah, right, yeah. Okay. So there really is this snowball occurring, and, you know, we really don't understand just how many people are on this snowball with us.
Yes. How would we? Because we can't measure consciousness.
Yeah.
So, and it's not being publicized, but it's growing nonetheless.
Yeah.
And it's growing exponentially every day. I've been flabbergasted the last 3 months of the quality of millennials, awakened millennials, that have just rocked up here at our center.
Very cool.
Had conversations for hours with them. And it's just remarkable that it's taken me, you know, at 75 years of age, these guys have got what I've been struggling with to get for all my life, and they just wake up and they've got it, right?
How did they get it?
Not to say, I think they just came downloaded with it. I really do. I think there's, you know, there's this structure where the hippies were first and then the indigos. Each generation is building and building and building momentum and increasing upon it. So the same is happening with consciousness, and it was possible. It's possible for rainbow children to incarnate on this planet now, because there's a much stronger foundation than there was in the 50s.
Yeah.
So, and these people are just showing up. They're just for a one night or 3 nights, and they're usually couples, very loving, very kind, and very awakened. And I'm just
Which countries are they coming
from? All over. Now, more recently, they've been living in Bali, or they've been stuck here in Bali, and they've found us here. But Easter, we had the whole place was full this Easter. The doors are open, and hopefully this will give Bali a much needed shot in the arm of economy. But
that sounds amazing.
Amongst them, there's some really remarkable people. So it gives me great hope. I'm just uplifted having conversations, and I tell them, you guys are you are the leaders of the future. You've come here not to divorce yourself from the old unworkable paradigm and to create a new one. And you're unstoppable. And now you're in your 20s, late 20s. You are posturing to become leaders in this new paradigm. And a lot of them are entrepreneurs or digital nomads that are independent, powerful, financially secure, not from rich parents, but just having made it themselves. So I find it really uplifting and gives me great cause for celebration.
Wow. Yeah. We are all standing on the shoulders of giants, aren't we? I mean, you know, you're standing on the collective energy of your parents and grandparents, and also the culture that supported you. And, you know, I've come in on the shoulders of my parents, and like your daughters, my kids, they're standing on the shoulders of us. Yeah, this is a very hopeful step to hear about those amazing millennials.
Yes.
And if they're turning up in Bali, they're probably turning up in India and all these other places where
over the place,
just where they need to be. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Go on, you're going to say something.
We've got generations that built the foundation of our lives, you and I, and your viewers and listeners. Even our DNA goes back from half from mum and half from dad, going back and back.
Yeah.
And then the generations that our families have belonged to, each time improving the circumstances and growing more conscious. So perhaps there is a grand scheme, a plan, some blueprint that is unfolding that we're not privy to, but certainly part of. And we don't know. I liken it to the Hindu wheel, where we're all spokes in the wheel, and the wheel is turning. We don't know where it's going to end up. Will it turn left? Will it turn right? Will it stop? Will it roll forward fast? Will it go backwards? But if we're a spoke in the wheel, when we're at the top, we can see back where the wheel's been, the indentation on the grass or the mud or whatever. But we can very rarely see much of the future, unless you're an astrology, and I'm in good hands here, right?
And the other thing about being a spoke on the wheel, you want to be on the inside of the spoke, like in the center, rather than the outside. If you're on the outside, as that wheel goes round, you really are feeling the ups and downs. So if you're in the center on that spoke, in the center of the wheel on the spoke, as close to the center as you can, your experience is going to be very level.
Yes. and no spoke is better than another spoke. No spoke is more important than another spoke. This is how the Hindus see life, the great wheel of life.
Bless them.
The great wheel of life could be this blueprint or this plan that is unfolding, and other cultures have similar ideas, that it's unfolding, but we don't. It's up to us to dip into the field of potential, to support in coherent alignment with this wheel that is turning. The wheel that we can't see.
Never a truer word has been spoken.
I'm sure I didn't make it up, so it must have been.
We've been on air over an hour now, and I really thank everyone that's joined us today, even though no one even chatted with us in the chat room today. But you know what, it worked out really nicely, because we've really touched on lots of things. So when we opened up today, we were talking about how does it serve us, what did we mean by that? We're talking about letting go. What is, if we're going to let go of something, where is the thing that we're letting go in our minds? Mainly, we've spoken about the time travel that we can do to the past and future, to release pain, and also to almost start programming in better behaviors, or different choices. The idea that we can quantum jump and quantum jump into the consciousness, the shared consciousness that we all have, and use that to our benefit, and also use it to benefit others. We've spoken about the generations. We've really touched on so much in this process of dismantling the old whilst we're awaiting for the new to kind of arise. This is a huge quantum conversation, Rick, and I absolutely honor and thank you so much for joining me today. What a blast. Have you got a final thought to send me off on my day with?
Yes, just a slight correction.
Okay.
We're not waiting for the future to arrive. We're creating the future that we can all abide in. But other than that, it's been a lovely conversation. And we've caught up with a couple of weeks missing. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, I've loved every minute of it. Thank you so much.
Me too.
Right. Time to, we've got our chickens back, Rick. So it's time for me to go and feed the chickens, feed them lots of lovely things, and go and wake up the kids and do my stuff. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join us again real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now.
Love you all. Bye-bye.